Good evening. It is I, Ronkar. It is my pleasure to be with you in this evening. Last week, for those of you who were in attendance, you may remember that we spent some time speaking about being in the now. And I would like to give you some advantages of being in the now. One of the things that being in the now commands is that you leave the past behind. And we discussed last week, and you know perfectly well, that the past cannot be changed except in your perceptions. And so you need to work on changing your past with your conscious mind and in reinterpreting those things that have happened to you in such a way that they cause you no distress. It means that you need to forgive if there are things to be given, to be forgiven in your past. For when you let go of things in your past, or you transform the things in your past to be neutral and not disturbing toward yourself, retaining perhaps only the good memories, but even to some extent letting those go as a daily thought for yourself. Because let's be honest with one another, you have a tendency to go over the things that are disturbing in your past far more frequently than you go over the things that gave you pleasure and which made you feel good in your past. You have a tendency to forget the good things, but the bad things, the anxieties, the frustrations, the annoyances, the anger, the hurt, the shame, these, what are termed negative emotions and negative reactions, continue to stay with you. And you think of these things over and over again. And you revise your words and your actions. And you maybe even remonstrate to yourself that you should have said this or you should have done that. And so in going through these things, you keep the past alive in your memory. It becomes a burden upon your shoulders, for you are always thinking about these negative emotions. And as your thought goes to these negative emotions, so they provoke the same reactions that they did the first time you experienced these things. Although they can change slightly, they sometimes you can change them and you may not feel as upset by things. And this is what I'm suggesting you do. You either learn to forgive and you forgive whatever it is that is bothering you because it no longer serves you to retain the hurt, the fear, the annoyance, the frustration, the pain, the anger, all the negative emotions that may go along with this. And so that is the reason for your forgiving, so that you free yourself from those emotions. And that allows you to be more in the present. Because as I said, you have a tendency to forget about and not purposefully reenact those things that were good in your life. You may from time to time remember them with fondness. And of course, that always enriches your life experience at the moment. And perhaps you have gratitude for those situations. And having gratitude for those situations also enhances your well-being. It allows your body to nurture itself, to get rid of inflammatory things. And so it allows you to heal in many ways when you think of the good things in your past. But they are not burdensome to you. What you need to do is let go of all those negative things that caused you pain or suffering in some way and just focus upon the now of the moment. Now, it is sometimes useful to think about the future, provided you are thinking about the future in such a way that you are creating a goal or an activity for yourself that should bring you future happiness or future prosperity, future good health. It is fine to think of the future in terms of ways you can enrich yourself in your physical being. But it is not fine to think about what would be termed worries, possible negative happenings that might come into your life. For when you send your energy through into the negative things, it similarly has bad reactions upon your body. In the physicalness of your body, it generates its own agitation and stress and causes your body to have difficulty in its functioning. Because when you are stressed, your muscles tense. It makes it harder to pump blood through your system when your muscles are just tense. Everything is harder to achieve when you are tense and you are worried because you are contemplating what possibly could go wrong. And so you are giving strength to those ideas. You are sending out the thought of what could go wrong. And you are creating that possibility in your life. If you don't create it, it cannot manifest for you. If you know that everything is going just fine. An example, of course, is this COVID virus that everyone has been infecting many people. If you constantly worry about contacting the virus, you are sure to bring it towards yourself at some point in time. Now, this may not be disastrous to you, for your scientists have already come up with many things which help to bring you immunity, as well as things which help you to fight that virus, to bring yourself back to good health. But why go through with it all? Do what you need to do to keep yourself safe. The suggestions that you get may not be perfect of wearing masks and keeping distances, but they do help. And they make things, it makes it more difficult for you to be infected with the virus. And so follow the guidelines and know that you are safe. And between the two things, you will probably be safe. So it is important to think positively about your future. It is good to think about goals you want to achieve. Think of strategies on ways to achieving your goals. All these things will help you a great deal in your quest for happiness in your life. And it is not that you are not living in the moment when you think about how to achieve something in the future. You are living in the moment because you are addressing a problem or an issue or something in the moment. You are seeking something you can do in the now, which brings about a future good for yourself. So although you are thinking about the future in a sense, as long as you are not daydreaming about the future, you are thinking constructively of how to create the future for yourself. This is your best role as a creator, how to create your future for yourself. One of the other ways in which you are a creator has to do with recreating the past. By changing your criteria in some way, by thinking about a situation that has happened in the past in some way, in a new way of thinking, so that you are not thinking in a painful way. You are not making what has happened painful any longer. You are seeing it perhaps with new wisdom and understanding that what was said and done was not a reflection of yourself. And it was not a reflection, even perhaps, of that person, whoever said or did it, affection or their relationship to you. It was a reflection of what they were going through in that moment. Perhaps they were stressed with many problems going on in their own homes, which made them not able to think about you And so perhaps they spoke out of anger or annoyance, which was misplaced on you or to you, but was the result of what was happening to them. It may be the result, their actions and the things they said or did may be the result of poor guidance or poor help when they were growing up, so they never learned better. That is a very good way for you to excuse someone's actions. Oh, that poor person was never taught good manners. That poor person was never taught to be empathetic to others or understanding to others. That's why they couldn't give me what I wanted. It was a reflection of their lack, not a reflection of my position in their life. Do not personalize things that happened in your past. Let go of what happened in your past, because then you are free to enjoy the moment and the future. You will, instead of thinking of the past, you will think creatively of your future. What else can I do to bring me more prosperity? What else can I do to increase my social interactions at this time? How, what people should I reach out to say hello? Shall I try to get a service which allows me to see my friends on my my device so that we can feel as if we're closer to one another? There are so many things you can contemplate about making your life better. Why think about the past, which drags you perhaps into unhappiness? And so, this is a continuation of our talk on being in the moment. Enjoy the moment. Use this moment that you have, for all you have is this moment, every moment, to act constructively, to bring about your best self, your best thought, your best happiness. Don't allow yourself to be dragged into negativity from the past or worry about the future. For the now is what you are experiencing, and you can have a wonderful life if you choose to by working and staying in the now and choosing to think of only good things and good thoughts. So, are there any questions on what I've spoken of in this evening, or would you have other questions you would like answered?
Well, I'm going to jump in on this one. You know, I'm always good for that. It's not a negative experience that I had, but it's an experience in the past, and I still have questions regarding it. Our like we base the future on our lived experiences, and so that's the framework in which we have to work off of. And I totally agree with anything negative to pivot from it and focus on what you're wanting. um, I think for me, and we all do that, no one's an exception to it, but I think like I'm more focused as you were speaking, still unanswered questions of things that have come into my experience that I'm still pondering. I just found out something from someone who doesn't channel. She claims to be in contact with those from off world, and she says they link directly into the internet, so they're communicating that way. And it just opened up a Pandora's box for me, a question that I've asked you quite some time ago that I never really got an answer to. And that's not a condemnation or anything, but the question still appears. So how do we address something like that? It's one thing that, okay, we had a bad experience and we want to move forward, but when we have something gnawing at us, a life experience, and we're still trying to put the pieces together to have a greater understanding of the nature of reality in which we find ourselves in. Thank you.
So, your question is more about the nature of reality. I am not sure what this question is that has been gnawing at you, because I am not sure where your comment about the person who believed they were in touch with off-world people. actually
Well,
how it ties it all in together. Could you try to reframe your question for me?
yeah, well, she made a comment that light workers, star seeds, whatever name you want to give it, that she claims that her, I guess more the word avatar, that star seeds, not all, but some, and particularly from this group, they, in order to protect themselves, they're in a stasis field. And then I guess their essence, if you will, um, somehow manifests into a human body. I don't know if that's before the baby's born or whatever. I have to listen to it again. Unfortunately, I fell asleep. But at least when I woke up and what I heard beforehand was like their consciousness, I guess, is transported in some manner into this realm of reality. And I've spoken with you before that I felt like I was being pulled out of a cocoon. That's the only word I can use. I have to use phraseology from 21st century Earth. It may be very well something else. I've had this multiple times, and it felt like I was being pulled out from something. So I thought afterward, not right away, oh my God, maybe that was me. Maybe that was like I was in a pod of some sort, the stasis field of some sort. I have no idea. I still have the question. It happened in my past,
So, so
and
if
that's
I,
the question.
if I am to understand you now, you have had an experience where for yourself you felt like you were being pulled out of a cocoon or pulled out of a pod. It really does not matter what word that we use for this. For is this a way that you are describing? You felt that you were being born in this way, or are you having a memory of having been born in this way? I am not.
I, Yeah, no problem. I don't have any memory of my birth or very, very early, infant. Like normal humans, when you're 2 or 3 years old, you start forming some memories you may hold on to, but they're very, very sporadic, very light memories. This was recent, like within the past, I haven't had one in quite some time, maybe years. I didn't date them, but I would say at least 2 years ago, I've had it maybe 3 times that I can count. One time, I believe I had a deer tick in me, and that I'm 100% positive of, an embedded deer tick into my abdomen. Perhaps it was infected with Lyme. I don't know. I ended up getting Lyme anyway. But right after that, I had that experience. This might have been other times that maybe for health reasons I may not have been aware of, to preserve myself in some manner. But that's why I've always asked you, what exactly was that experience? There were other experiences that I think you definitely nailed it. There's the matrix itself, and I think there's players in the play that create these things. You can call them all kinds of names. I don't want to go there because everyone has a different name for it. Programming might be one, but this one I think is very different than some of the other experiences that I've had. So that's what I was
And just
wanting
to
to.
clarify, just one little aspect of this.
Yeah,
Did this impression come to you while you were awake and doing something, or while you were asleep,
I was
and or
asleep.
perhaps just waking up?
Right. As I found myself waking up from the experience, it was never while I was conscious, awake and aware, and I'm walking around, all of a sudden I feel myself pulled out of my body. No, no. If I ever did that, astrally, that was either in one time intentional, all the other times I just started vibrating very high and then found myself outside of my body. Though I never looked back at my body, but I had gone through walls and I've been on the astral plane without question. And I have very clear memory of that. I've had other dark memories where I felt like I was upside down, or I'm going through a corridor on a gurney, or I'm in a room, and I've told you this before, where I must have had food poisoning and I felt pressure on my abdomen, and there were two light beings at the end of the table. And then I woke up and I was fine, but I went to bed not feeling well at all. And clearly it it fixed itself. They healers,
Yes,
whatever word you want to
yes.
use for it. I don't care
Whoever
which.
those were, whoever those were, it does not matter whether
Right,
it was
exactly. Totally agree with you. It's irrelevant.
healed. And that is what is most important. And while that healing process was taking place, perhaps while you were asleep, your subjective mind um, created the created a visualization of that healing taking place with the assistance of others. And so that was a different situation than what you are asking me about now. I am trying to identify it because it is not easy to um, look into someone's mind, so to speak, as it's much easier to see a happening rather than a thought. And you are speaking about a thought that you had while you were sleeping. Once again, this would be a reaction to the creative or the subjective mind, rather, um, informing you or trying to bring you understanding of a situation that you might have been emerging from, because that, I believe, is the word that most experiences or most explains what it is you were experiencing. You were emerging from something. And at this point in time, I would say that um, it is very possible that within your life at that point in time, that you had come to new understandings about some aspect either of your life, yourself, some situation, another person. And this, of course, would be a transformative thing for you to experience. And so your subjective mind um, undoubtedly gave you that feeling of emerging from whatever, it did not matter what it was, emerging because you were entering a new reality of your life, something that you understood more fully than you did before, something that now made more sense to you. And you may not have quite gotten it in your conscious mind, but your subjective mind was quite, your mind when you were asleep, your subconscious mind, if you will, was quite aware of what you were in the process of manifesting. And projected this feeling and created this within itself for you to experience while you were asleep as a signal of your development. Because what you are speaking about is, in a sense, a giving birth or a birthing process for yourself, which I believe is most accurately a reflection of um, new knowledge, new understanding, new comprehensions that you may have been in the process of creating at that time. And I hope that is helpful, and perhaps this will not gnaw at you any longer. You'll just see it as, that is me telling myself that I am growing.
Yeah, unless I have access to my Akashic record, which I don't know if you can access that. I mean, that makes sense. I do validate um, some of that. I didn't know if it was also a healing experience for me, because definitely with the Lyme, or at least the embedded deer tick, I didn't get any sense from my higher self as to the meaning behind it, unfortunately. So I was kind of in the dark, even right up to now. But when she shared this information, I thought, oh my gosh, and I was processing it through. And I thought, maybe I better ask you and see if you have access to any of that akashically or not, and if that holds true to me as well, or that was something completely different. Thank you.
You are most welcome. I hope it was helpful. Are there other questions?
Hi, Rankar, this is Mahesh.
Oh, hi, Mahesh.
Soham was listening to your lecture, and then he had a meeting, so he went for a meeting. But he gave me this question, so I'm reading it. This is in regard to the what you said about the daydreaming and the constructive planning for the future.
The planning for the future, yes?
The difference between the daydreaming and constructive planning for the future.
The difference between daydreaming.
Oh, the difference between daydreaming and constructive planning for the future.
Now, the question here is, he says that Abraham advises for us to daydream about things that feel good to us and go with the daydreaming as long as it feels good. And, this helps attract the wanted situation in our life. Can you please advise on this and how it may differ from the daydreaming context you mentioned in your lecture today?
Yes. Daydreaming is a fine thing, and it can be very creative as long as you are thinking in daydreaming in detail and you are making it constructive thoughts, because that is more like it is what people can experience when they're busy in the creative process, or they are not thinking with their most logical self. They have often opened themselves up to the possibilities that are there within their subconscious or subjective mind. Do you understand? Yes. So they are accessing information from, you might say, psychically, that is out there in the universe. I'm daydreaming as long as I'm thinking of possibilities of solving problems, taking steps and creating things, that perhaps what I am doing is making touch or coming in touch with facts that will be manifesting and bringing them into my conscious mind as something to work for. The kind of daydreaming I am saying that is not constructive is to sit there and say, I just won this new lottery and I have won $40 million or $100 million or whatever the amount is, a fantastic sum of money. And what would I do with it? How would I spend this money? So you're starting with something that isn't probable. It is possible that you would win money, but it is the odds are against it. And so you are not thinking in a constructive way at all. You are merely thinking a fantasy for yourself. And you can continue to do that as long as it makes you feel good. And it can be a pleasurable experience, but it is not constructive as much as it would be if you said, how I've had this problem, and what would it be like if I could solve this problem, and how could I solve this problem? And then allow your mind to move along. That's contemplation as opposed to daydreaming. Contemplating how you can achieve something, or you can get something done, or the possibilities that you can reach within your own life using your own skills. You can't, if you have never trained or do not have much background in science or the physical body, and there is no hope, well, I should not say no hope, you could decide to go to medical school. It is daydreaming to think of what your life might be like if you were a surgeon or a physician. Because unless you would like to do that, and that thought gives you inspiration to take the action to become a physician or a surgeon, it has been just a pleasurable moment. And if you wish to think of that, that is fine, but it does not help you in your life. So it's not even being in the now, you're in the nowhere.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, you understand.
Yes, I do.
So just use your fantasies to think of where you could go and what I could achieve based on a little bit of reality. And then that comes into constructive thinking and is good.
Sure. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions?
Okay. If you have experienced something negative or disastrous or whatever in your past, and you think you've dealt with it, and then somewhere down the line you run into somebody or a situation or something that triggers the feelings back again, does that mean that you really haven't gotten past it?
I look at those things as this is now another test. If you have had a karmic situation in your life of learning something, some skill, and the incident that you are talking about was part of your learning process, and as a result of that incident, you changed your life a bit at that time and made your life better, and you go through life again. These type of things can come back to you in a slightly different form, sometimes slightly more complicated, a little bit more difficult each time, because you must look at it in this way, that it is helping you to learn the lesson in every aspect. Perhaps that is a karmic lesson that you had to learn or you had to experience. And when you experience it another time, each time you experience it, you get better at not having the same negative reactions. You find the solutions easier and you overcome the situation much faster. For if you have entered into an incarnation with the purpose of learning certain lessons, and you overcome the big ones that are there when you are young, as perhaps as a young adult, and you finally figure it out as a slightly older adult, and you make your life better and you go along and whammo, it comes back to you again in a different form from a different situation, but it's the same problem and the same lesson. Well, that is just you experiencing the karma and making sure that you know and you have fully learned the reason for your incarnation with that particular problem. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, but it sounds like you're specifically saying karma, like bringing something from another life
Yes.
and not realizing it. Okay, how about people who experience something in this life? Like suppose somebody gets raped. That's not going to be pleasant in any way, shape, or form.
Yes.
And maybe they've dealt with it in whatever way and forgiven the person and as best they can and so on and so forth. And so somewhere down the road, either maybe they hear about the person or somebody says something about it, something triggers something inside of them that takes them right back to the original situation.
Yes, I do understand what you are saying. And so, in a sense, this time you are phrasing it in such a way that you may not be experiencing the same situation, but
Right.
you are merely now been brought to your mind again.
Yes.
And you still have that same process to go through that you had the first time. It will be lessened of less trauma, so to speak, to you the second time, because it did not physically happen the second time. You were merely remembering it, and you will quickly find your way back through the process that you used the first time to put it behind you. So it still comes back as a review lesson. Do you understand? On to put something of the nature that you are speaking about, a rape or perhaps a physical beating in some way. There are many things that could come to you that when you remember them, it is extremely traumatic. That is your person who is experiencing PTSD, as it's called, post-traumatic stress disorder. That is a variety of that. And if you had put it aside and gotten over it and put it out of your mind for a long time, and then all of a sudden something happened to bring it back to you, the memory, this is just, you must look at it as another test of whatever has happened and know that you can, by using the same processes you used the first time, you can even just remember how you healed yourself and once again put the trauma behind yourself. And that is the best way to deal with such situations, by remembering your thoughts, your actions, and how you took care of yourself to move forward again and put the situation behind you. It just makes you stronger.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, it is difficult with things that happened in your past and you suddenly are brought back into memory on these things. And sometimes, because you have not totally dealt with it, the second time around, you'll do much better. And eventually, if it happens again, eventually it will stop happening and you will continue, you will not have that problem. You will remember it. For those of you who have lost loved ones, you know that there was a time of intense grief over your loss. And eventually that fades from your being and it is not intense. But another loss in your life will bring back that whole memory of that other loss. And so it will be extremely painful. But over time, it will fade. You all know that if you've experienced losses, as you get further and further away from that period of the loss, while you don't experience it, it doesn't totally go away. It becomes less painful and is less of a problem. And so just thinking about it at year 10 after your loss is not as painful as thinking about it in years 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And eventually you'll think of it in sorrow, but it will not be painful. It will merely be a remembering of a painful time without the ongoing emotional attraction or emotional feeling that goes and went with that loss the first time. It becomes too far in the distance. You have become accustomed to the person being gone from yourself. And so you don't actively miss them in the same way you once did. And that is the same for other traumatic memories. Over time, they become less traumatic. Are there other questions?
In the case of a loss, if you start to let it go and you deal with it, does the person who you lost start to feel like you've forgotten about them? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're asking about in spirit.
Yes,
When,
the people that are in spirit, do they then feel like we've just forgotten about them and we just
oh
never
no,
what it was about that and why we had to live through this?
oh,
I
well,
feel a little guilty moving on sometimes.
no. Those of us in spirit who have left loved ones behind are actually pleased to see those loved ones moving ahead with their lives and not feeling the pain of our loss. We know that we had a permanent impact in their lives, that they loved us, and they haven't stopped loving us because they are no longer actively painful. So that understanding is fully there when you are in spirit. And we actually, in a sense, feel happier. In many ways, it is impossible to feel happier when you are in spirit because everything is good. But it gives us a feeling of gladness or appreciation. And happiness is the only way I can say it, to see our loved ones moving on in their lives and being happy again. Because when you love someone, what is most important is that they are happy. And when we have left those that we leave behind, we are happy when they are happy. It is most painful to visit, to see when there is great unhappiness or stress. And that is why many people cannot experience the presence of their loved one who has passed on in their lives, because that loved one, that spirit, has a difficulty being as close as they could be because of the pain or suffering of the friend, the loved one, the parent that they left behind. And so we are happy when you are happy. It gives us great joy to experience the fact that you are joyful and happy. I hope that brings you some understanding.
Yes, thank you.
You're almost welcome.
On that note, did my mother come skiing with me today? Because I invoke her every time to go downhill skiing with me since she wasn't able. And I've had some mystical experiences on the trail I won't go into for brevity, but I ask her all the time, said she can come through me, and then that's
Ski with
pretty much
you.
it. Yeah,
She goes skiing with you. Well, she probably does, since you invite her to do so.
always, Ron, always. I love skiing with my mom. It's great. She didn't have the opportunity. She had weak ankles. There was a picture of her on skis in the middle of the street. And I asked her, I said, Mom, what were you doing on these skis? She said, it was a next door neighbor. I have weak ankles. I always wanted to ski. So when I started doing downhill, I called her, and just to share with everyone, I was scared to go down a trail one time because I had a very negative experience a couple of years prior, but I wanted to go on it. And this man skied up to me and he said, follow me. It was very unusual. You know, people don't just ski up to you and say, hey, follow me, let's go on it. And I got down to the bottom and I thought, and he was ahead of me the whole time. And I thought, I'll see him on the chair, or we'll sit on the chair together and go back up again. I never saw him. I didn't even see him going up the hill. And I thought that must have been my mother. So
Could have been your mother.
could have been.
Could have been one of your angels.
Absolutely.
Helping you.
Yep. Thank you.
Question.
Are there other questions?
Yes, I have one.
Yes.
I don't know if I'll articulate it well, but what a few of you have been talking about, kind of stirring it around in my mind. The issue of forgiveness, and then this other issue of trauma, like post-traumatic stress. Is the healing of the most severe, perhaps violent, ripping, mentally traumatic experiences, is the forgiveness, if it's, and the healing from those things, if it is even possible, commensurate with the amount of healing that that person is going to experience? I know Abraham Hicks says, as Mahesh was talking about, they say that as soon as you experience something you don't like, rockets of desire and knowing of what you do want emerge. But certain experiences that people go through are beyond that. I mean, it's so difficult for them to assimilate it because it's such a deep, shocking wound, and perhaps so sudden that I'm not really sure forgiveness or healing can can occur from everything, every kind of an experience that anyone can have. So I'm really not sure what this question is. Just how does forgiveness apply to those kind of things? I mean, things that put people into insane asylums, people that develop split personalities that because of the trauma of the experiences that they have had. Is it possible for everyone to, or is everything really forgivable and heal from a bowl?
Yes, I understand what you are saying. Not everything is forgivable because sometimes there is nothing personal about what has happened. And I believe that is what you are speaking about. Even those who have had some very traumatic life experiences as they are growing up with extremely abusive parents or alcoholic parents, so their parenting was not there, and there may have been physical abuse and pain and suffering. These things are not forgiven as much as they can be eventually scarred over, which would make them less sensitive and to causing hurts, not intruding itself into the consciousness as much as they do when it first happens. I believe you understand that there are things. Now, if you take something personally and you realize that, or you feel that this was something that was done to me personally, deliberately, to hurt me, to cause me problems, then that is what needs to be forgiven. If you can see that this action was not done to you personally, deliberately, to cause you difficulty, but was the result of a personality disorder, say, of someone else, was the result of your being in the wrong place at the wrong time when a car went off the road and you may have been injured by that car. This was not something that happened to you deliberately. You can't forgive that incident because there's nothing to forgive. Essentially, it was an accident. And while it may have been part of your karma, it was not directed at you in a malicious way. So how could you possibly forgive that? All you can do is heal from it in whatever way that you can heal. And just like many wounds, it leaves scar tissue on yourself. But scar tissue is the result and has the result of having a toughening of the skin in that area. It is like a callus that someone grows to protect a spot from further injury or use to make it stronger. And so that is, there are things that are not, you cannot say, I have to forgive this because it just was not done to you maliciously. And you know that in your mind. You know that it was done for accidentally, or this person is sick. And I just do not take it personally. And then you can develop the scar tissue and the healing that you need. These things sometimes are what has been brought up for that which you might call PTSD, traumatic happening that you continually remember. But you can heal from this over time by thinking about it and applying reason to it, that this is not happening. This is not the same incident. This loud noise, which scares me so much, is because when I was younger, or 10 years ago, or 2 years ago, or last week, I happened to be in the proximity of an explosion where I got slightly hurt, but it was still a very traumatic experience to experience that. And so loud noises now make me very upset, but this too will go away over time when you experience enough loud noises that do not cause you a problem. And then you will eventually stop reacting in the same way. So I think that is what you are talking about when you
I
ask.
do like that comparison of scarring over and developing calluses. Sometimes that creates problems in your life because a person becomes defensive, but it's better than the original trauma for sure. It's a measure of healing.
Yes.
Thank you. I think I'll remember that term. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And yes, you are correct that scar tissue can cause you difficulty because it may limit your movement. It may limit your ability to feel in that area because it is too thick. But it is necessary for part of the healing. And whatever heals you, you should not reject in any way. You have to move on from situations and you need to allow yourself to be healed. Are there other questions?
Is there any way you can get rid of that scar tissue?
Well, that is an interesting question because on the physical plane, sometimes you can have that scar tissue repaired through surgical removal of such situations and can be corrected through surgery. And sometimes mental scar tissues can be corrected through therapy, the help of a psychiatrist or a therapist to help you see things in a different way, to so that you no longer experience them in that way. So yes, these things can be corrected afterwards to get rid of such scar tissues. But the healing would have been necessary for it to be healed before you can move on from it. And with the help of a therapist or the help of a surgeon, scar tissue can be removed and changed. And you can then feel happier and healthier and more flexible, whatever words you would like to think, but you can, yes, put it away. Now, one way of eliminating such traumatic scars on a mental level can be through the use of hypnosis, where the hypnotist, if you have a skilled hypnotist, can reach your subjective mind or subconscious mind, whichever way you prefer to think of it, and he can give you, or she can give you post-hypnotic suggestions which heal these situations. And that can be extremely effective in creating better things and making a better life for yourself. So if you find the scar tissue is still painful, then you might try something such as that, hypnosis, or a therapist who will give you new ways of thinking about something and things to tell yourself so that you can heal.
Okay. When you were talking about mental scars, would that be kind of like the situation, I think it was 5 Faces of Eve or something, where she developed different personalities, but if she hadn't developed them, she would have gone crazy. So she did it to protect her sanity?
Yes, in a sense, that is what she did. That was a way of coping with it. She I'm not sure what I need, disidentified or disoriented. She took herself, she negated that personality that she was and created a new personality for herself, which was not affected by those events. And in the new personality, there was no memory of some of these old events, or if there was, it didn't matter because the new personality didn't care.
Yep,
So
that's what she did.
yes, and some people do this, but in a sense, it is a form of mental disorder.
Yes, but if that's the scars, if that's a form of scars, then, and she did get help, so she did, go to a psychiatrist and, work things out.
Yes, and there are people who do have multiple personality disorders. But it is not common, and it was always due to one way of coping with a situation that they could not cope with. Very often this occurred as children, dealing with these situations as a child where there were very little skills. They moved into the fantasy of pretending that they were somebody different until they could do that with great facility. And so when necessary, in a threatening situation, wow, I'll just become the tiger or the lion or a person who is so big and so strong that nothing can hurt me. And they create this in fantasies. Usually this is not done in adulthood.
Right. And I presume emotional scarring is about the same as mental scarring, right?
Yes, in many ways. It is the same because what triggers your emotion? It's your thoughts. So whatever you are thinking causes you to feel. So if you think you are strong, you will feel strong. If you think you are weak, if you think you are frightened, and when I use the term think, when you are feeling frightened, that is your emotion. You have decided that your thought is that I am not strong enough to cope with this situation. This could overcome me. And so I am afraid, frightened, that I will be killed or I will be hurt or I will be injured in some way. And so that all thoughts stimulate your emotions.
Okay.
That's, if you could stop thinking, you would cease having emotions.
Okay.
Is that not true?
Yeah, I guess it is. Because I guess the thought has to come first before you have the reaction of the emotion.
That's right. How could you fall in love with someone unless you had the thought, this is a wonderful person? If you think it's a terrible person, then you will not fall in love with them. You have to say, it is a wonderful person. Now, there are people who fall in love with criminals in jail because they say, well, this is a really good person underneath. I know what he did, but he really is just vulnerable. Or he is, he just wasn't given enough affection, or whatever it happens to be. He tried, but he wasn't successful. He is really a good person underneath. And they fall in love with people in jail because they have that thought that this is a good person underneath. And of course, they should learn to become a little bit more discriminating because people's actions are a reflection of their ethics and their beliefs. And so usually good people do not do bad things.
Well, as far as falling in love goes, I don't remember doing any thinking.
Oh, but you did.
Apparently.
You had to say at some point in time, either this man is very good looking, you looked at a baby and you said, this is my wonderful child, I love this baby. Of course, your hormones and stuff all predispose you to loving your baby. What's happening in your life causes you to love that baby, but you think of that with, and even when they grow up and they don't behave as you would wish them to, you still love them.
Yep.
And that's what's left because you still know that this was your baby and this was your child. And you may be disappointed in them, but you still love them because the thought is that this is my wonderful creation and I love this. I want this child. I want the best. What is love? but wanting the best for the other person and also wanting it for yourself. So you look at love and you create love by thinking that this is a good person. And there is a special reason here about this person that makes me want to have him in my life or her. And I know that they are fantastic and good. And if you love your work, it's something you enjoy doing. If you love strawberry shortcake, it's because it tastes good and you love it. Love is always stimulated by the thought, this is good. This is good for me. It makes me feel better. It makes me happy. It doesn't matter whether it's food that you are eating, whether it's people that you are being with. I love this person because they are so much fun to be with. It does not matter. You find that triggers your love. And what triggers hate? The same thought in reverse. This person is terrible. They do not behave right. They hurt me. They say things that hurt my feelings. I do not like this person. And you're judging. And so you're seeing that this person doesn't behave by your ethical standards and you do not like them. And that may even cause you to wish that they would go away and just die or something. But that is the definition of hate. And so if you think almost always of your emotions, you can figure out the thought that triggers that feeling. Oh, this person that I love is unhappy. I am so sorry. I have regret for this person that their actions hurt them so much. I have pity. This person is so sick. I feel sorry for them. I would wish that they are well. You have pity. And it's always a judgment that triggers your emotion or a feeling or a thought, but rather not a feeling, a thought. A judgment, a thought triggers your emotion.
Okay, but I still think it was my hormones.
Well,
With falling in love, that is.
Hormones actually do play a role in creating emotions. They have many roles, but you may just assume it was your hormones. But there still had to be the thought that this man will satisfy my hormones or my body.
Okay. I don't remember it, but I'll take your word for it.
I know you do not remember it. Many emotions, most emotions come over people so quickly, they don't recognize the thought that they had when these emotions erupted. They don't recognize the fact when they get hurt or they feel anger over something someone said to them, that the first thing upon hearing this was that he or she should not have said this. That's terrible. They spoke to me like this. That was their first thought. That was bad, what they did. And so then they end up being hurt or they are angry. Anger is almost always triggered by a he or she should not have this thought, should not have done that, should not have said that, should not be that way. That gets people angry. That's the thought that you have to get angry.
So when people have immediate reactions, they've actually had a thought before they did that reaction?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It just comes into your brain so fast that you don't recognize the thought that is there that triggered the feeling.
Okay.
Are there other questions?
Yeah, Rankar,
Yes,
may I ask a political question?
a political question? You may.
Will Mr. Trump ever be able to hold a public office in future?
I believe he would be able to hold an office in the future. However, I do not think he will choose to.
Thank you.
He will discover other ways in which he is powerful.
Mhm.
And so he will not need to seek office again.
So you mean he will be a kingmaker?
I'm sorry,
You mean to say that he will be a kingmaker?
a think maker,
Kingmaker.
thing maker.
Yeah, not a king, but the kingmaker.
I'm not understanding.
There is a king and there is a kingmaker, somebody who makes the king. But
Oh, a king. I'm sorry, I did not get the word king. Yes. No, I do not think he will be a kingmaker either. I don't think that is his chosen role. He came to do what he did. And there are other ways in which he can still be effective.
yes, I understand. Thank you.
You are welcome. Are there any other questions?
Since we're on the subject, my daughter wanted me to ask if you think that somebody might try to shoot Biden.
I don't think so. I mean, I cannot say for, let me look just a moment. I will try to see if I can see an assassination attempt. I do not see such an attempt. That doesn't mean there won't be one, but at this moment in time, I do not see such an attempt. Those who were Mr. Trump supporters in the whole would not do such a thing. And so for the moment, at least, there are no plots against Mr. Biden.
So thank you. I think she meant now anyways. I think she was thinking about the inauguration. But thank you.
Will not be disrupted.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Not with 20,000 troops lying around the the White House. I'm curious, though. There's a lot of talk that his vice president would step in soon afterward, that they will declare him unfit or something to that effect. Is there any substantial timeline on that? Thank you.
I do not see that. You have asked for a timeline, so I do not see that as a timeline. I know people have made such and had such a thought. However, I do not see that as a definite happening at this point in time. Once again, remember that because I'm speaking to you from this point in time, I'm seeing everything from this point in time. And situations may change, but it will not be as simple as having him declared incompetent. That is not an easy thing to do.
Well, the other thing that I have heard is that Trump will eventually, that Biden will, step into office, but then by March, perhaps that, after they clear all the voting issues and whatnot, then they'll determine that Trump actually did win. About 70% of the voting population voted for him. So it's been, touted out there under, and people can check this, Robert David Steele, and also Simon Parkes, Parkes for Parks. These two people have been spewing nonstop on this one. So I don't know where truth lies, of course, and we'll see how the timeline adjusts, but I just wanted your insights and thank you as always.
Yes, I do not think that you will find that out this March. Perhaps at some point in time it will be well demonstrated, but not this quickly. Are there other questions?
Yes, and in one of the discourse I had asked you that will Mr. Biden be able to heal the country and will he be able to push forward his agenda, clean energy and other things? And you said it was not so much like not to that extent. But now that they have the Senate also, whether things are changed or it will remain the same way.
Um, he will take actions to push forth his agenda. Yes, he will. But everything is harder than you think when it comes to changing the course of the country. And
Yeah.
it will be, and if you think about it, most laws and most rules never get enforced immediately, particularly when they have been made by the government. They say that right now we can, because no one would agree to having it done tomorrow, because each of the politicians have to reposition themselves and their own investments and their own lives to be such so that they will not be harmed by these things that they are passing. So therefore, they will always phase in new regulations. In other words, part of them will take effect, and then more at a later time, and then more at a later time. So it never happens immediately. Even if he should make declarations on his first day in office, changing all the things that Mr. Trump tried to put into the laws, the changes that he tried to make, these will not be undone immediately. And many of them are time limited and cannot be undone until a certain time has elapsed. So therefore, this is what you are safe in, so to speak, if you fear that which Mr. Biden has said that he will do. But he will do his best, and people will have mixed reactions. And those people who said that he will be able to do whatever he wants are as unrealistic as thinking that Trump could do everything that he wanted. It simply does not happen that easily and well, unless you are to instantly become a dictatorship with him as being the dictator. And I do not see that happening.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mahesh mentioned healing the nation, and I distinctly remember your lecture on that, that we have to heal, and then the nation will heal.
Yes, if you as individuals heal and come together, then it is possible that this will, the nation will heal, but it will not be the result of Mr. Biden doing anything in particular, because he is already not doing things to heal the nation. He is, to some degree, he has made statements which are almost as bad as things that Mr. Trump said, or are just as bad in his own way. It is just that people, some people, are not taking notice of them and making a big deal of it the way they did with what Mr. Trump said.
Yeah, that's because it's a Democrat controlled media. On that note, and I know we're getting late, so I'll keep it brief again. Is he ever going to answer for this whole Burisma thing and his son and selling out to China? Are we going to become more controlled by the Chinese because Mr. Biden's in their hip pocket? Definitely, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
I would not say you're going to be sold out to China. That is one of the swings of the pendulum that will not swing too far. I don't know how else to say it. Mr. Trump made an attempt to swing the pendulum. China was very effective at stopping that swing or limiting that swing. So therefore, the momentum to swing back is also lacking. So it's not going to be dramatic, let us put it that way. And there are people who have learned lessons in dealing with China and to realize that they are unreliable and not necessarily truthful and honest in many ways. They do have a different culture and a different way of looking at things. And as a result, people will not be quick to jump into old relationships. Some people will, but some people will not. Are there other questions?
Come on.
I think perhaps it is time for me to say goodnight. It has almost reached the end of our session. Am I not correct?
Couple minutes.
So then I am going to say goodnight to you, and Juana will be back, and then the medium will be back. And so I give you all my blessings. Good night.